Councillor Duran. No. Mayor Brown.
Here. Present.
Of course, we have our senior administration, Mr. Kelly.
Yes, here, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Quinn.
I'm here.
Anyone else from Parks and Recreation, senior administration, Frank?
Christopher is here. He's going to be taking the minutes.
Okay. Hello, Christopher.
Hello.
I think it's now 12:01. So without further ado, I'll call the meeting to order. Item 2, declarations of conflict of interest. Is there any conflicts of interest?
See none.
Approval of agenda.
I'll approve it.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Any business arising from the minutes?
I do, Councillor, Mr. Chair.
Yes?
I asked at the last meeting about the cost of the splash pad out at Victoria Park, and I believe Williamsworth McLeod forwarded something to Frank, and I know it took place, Frank, 1999, so it's about 20 years, but I think the cost was what, $20,000-$30,000, Frank?
I don't have that information right in front of me, but it's something I did have it, and we're going to be looking at getting the cost of what it would cost today. Looking back 20 years ago, I know what the cost is went up dramatically. So.
Yeah. Okay. So what we'll do, and with that being said, Frank will make a note of that.
Thank you, sir.
And we'll try to have that information in the not too distant future.
Thank you, sir.
Any other business arising from the minutes?
See none.
Okay.
Councillor Creel, can I just have you go back? You didn't actually adopt the minutes, so we can just.
Okay. Thank you, Frank. That was a misstep. I have a mover for the adoption of the minutes.
I'll move it.
Moved by Councillor Ramsey. Second by?
Terry.
Second by Councillor Bernard. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay. Thank you. Item 6, reports. Awarding of playground equipment purchase 2020. Now, with the committee's permission, I'm going to turn it over to Frank. And Frank, if you would kindly walk us through the recommendations from the staff to the Parks and Recreation Committee. You have a copy of the resolution in front of you. So, Frank, please go ahead.
All right, yeah, so you'll see the resolution in front of you. This year, we didn't have as many quotes as we normally would get, as many bids as we normally would get. We received 2, as you'll see in our backgrounder. The bids were deemed to be, reasonable price based on other years, so the prices were within range. We went through and evaluated the 2 bids, and you'll see the resolution that we are awarding with regards to each piece of playground equipment that we're buying for each park. So you'll see that in front of you there. I don't have the actual total of it right there. It's around under $60,000 for the actual equipment. Bear with me for a moment here.
No, take your time, Frank.
So it's it's around $58,000 for the playground equipment we're awarding. And with regard to that as well, you'll see that there's an additional amount that we're estimating for the install, which includes removal, installation, and contingency under the playground. So we're asking for $75,000 there to be allocated. And outside of that, I think the background is pretty self-explanatory.
Frank, just a question for you. I like the breakdown of the criteria. Will this also be included in the package for for the council?
Yes, the backgrounder will be attached, so it includes, the biggest thing with the playground equipment, that's, the price makes up 15 points of it. Actually, 100 points then make up the actual evaluation criteria, so that includes, like, the play value, the inclusivity play, technical specifications, creativity, and the technical. So those are all the technical score-related stuff. So that's the biggest part of this. We're wanting to get good quality playground equipment at a good value.
Okay, thank you, Frank. Is there any questions or concerns from the committee?
I have one, Councilor Creel.
Do you have a question?
Yes.
Okay, Kevin.
Frank, is that what it reads, that it's 75,000 for installation?
That is correct, yeah, 75,000. And what that includes, usually playground equipment, sorry. So playground equipment, the price of the equipment is one aspect of it, but the installation part of it is for, like, your medium structures. It costs about the same amount to install it as it does actually to purchase equipment. Now that includes removal of the old equipment if it has to be done, doing any landscaping, building the perimeter box, buying the pea gravel, those kind of things. Swings tend to be about 3 times the cost to install. And the reason why that is, the swing structure itself is pretty basic, but the actual, what's required is you're actually building your perimeter, building your pad, building your perimeter box, adding your pea gravel, and that material is not necessarily that cheap. So,
Does our staff do that, or do we bring in people?
yeah, our staff does the install. We do contract out some of the contract work, like, doing the grading,
Right.
the area, of course, buying the pea gravel, building the perimeter box. We do that as well. So, but yeah, our staff does the installations.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. Is there any other questions from the committee?
Yes, I do, Mitch.
Go ahead, Councilor Bernard.
Frank, did you say the park equipment was 58,000?
Based on what I had in front of me, yes, around 58,000. Is that correct? I didn't do the quick add up on the resolution, but based on what I had in another document.
Okay, so you had 125 to spend on parks equipment, correct?
Excuse me?
Oh, the total budget you had for parks equipment, was it not 125,000?
No, actually, it was slightly higher than that. So the actual playground equipment, we have $200,000 budgeted.
Okay.
So the equipment is one aspect of it. So we're spending about $58,000 on the equipment. The install of that equipment is about $75,000. There's a number of other things on the list of equipment underneath playground and parks, which includes replacing some of the pea gravel at some of the other structures where we have sand, replacing some of the perimeter boxes that have got, need to be repaired. I'd have to look at the exact list to see everything that was in there, but there might have been some, like, say, basketball heads that might have been for upgrades as well.
So right now you're at $135,000. So you still have 70,000 left, 65,000 left.
Yeah, that would be for the other work. I could try to find the actual file there that lists all the projects that were approved in that list.
Well, so the equipment, the parks equipment that we were looking for, and the list that was given, was that all fulfilled? Is that all the parks equipment that we were looking for?
Yes, that's all the equipment, and then that appears when you're looking into, I think it came in slightly under budget, which is good. So we're going to have a bit more money to do additional work at some of the playgrounds, like, upgrading the sand to pea gravel, and we're looking at where that needs to be done.
Okay, so the 75,000, Frank, I'm curious. I, like Kevin, thought we were doing most of the work. So the 75,000 is contracting out what?
No, the 75,000 includes includes some contract work, but includes the material. So, for example, the pea gravel. Pea gravel is very expensive.
Okay.
So that includes that material in there. It includes all the perimeter around it, so your 6x6 to put around the actual pads. Any kind of shale work that might be needed to do grading. So our staff does the install, but some of the prep work, like, getting the land ready, is done by a contractor. we buy the pea gravel from somebody and they bring it in with a truck to actually put it in place.
Okay, good enough. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor
Thank
Bernard.
Councillor Twill?
Mayor Brown?
Frank? The renewed plan for PEI was released yesterday in 4 phases. Where's the playground equipment in the phases? Is it the 4th phase? Because right now all our playground equipment is shut down to the public.
We're actually not 100% sure what phase that falls in. We're thinking it's not in phase 1. It's
Oh,
very
it's not.
unlikely that it's in phase 2. It could potentially be in phase 3, which is June 12th. But staff are in the process right now of reviewing the recreation and sport relation, like the facilities and playground structures and that kind of thing, and activities in relation to this plan. And we'll be looking at options, operational plans to start reopening certain recreational sports venues, permitting limited recreational activity, but while meeting the requirements of the public health. So,
And the reason I bring that up, Councillor Twill, I don't know if we need to be in a rush to get this equipment in, because if we're putting in new equipment and we can't use the equipment that we have out there in the playgrounds now because of the pandemic, our timeline is pretty flexible on this. That's what I'm saying.
No,
Frank?
I think you raise a good point. And I did have an opportunity to discuss this particular issue briefly with our Parks and Recreation manager prior to the meeting, and I think we've got to be very cautious. We have to be very patient. We have to continue with the collaborations and consultations with the Chief Medical Officer. We certainly don't want to go out and rush to open up the playgrounds only to have them shut down. So this particular exercise is evolving. It's evolving, and there's no single blueprint or model for how this is going to unfold. So we're going to assess it and evaluate it as the days move along. At the same time, continuously consulting with the Chief Medical Officer. So the message we want to bring forward to the community is things are working well now in terms of some of our active for transportation venues, our rails to trails, the inside lane in Victoria Park, the boardwalk. Everyone is cooperating and cooperating well. I think people have really bought in, and when the playgrounds are ready to be utilized by the children of this city, and of course people who live outside the city, we'll bring forward that announcement. But we're not going to rush into it. As Frank said, we're going to be patient. We've got to do our due diligence, and we'll continue along with that mindset.
Mr. Chair, and that's the point I'm trying to make, is that we just don't want to send out a mixed message that we're installing new equipment, but we can't use what we have. So patience, as you said, is very important, and we're working with the Chief Medical Officer. Our Chief Medical Officer and her team is part of this process of collaboration, cooperation. So yeah, again, we don't need to rush it. It's great to approve it. Let's carry on. Thank you.
Well, with respect to the installation of the new playground equipment, I think what we'll do, I think Frank, and of course Nancy McMahon and Dean Worth and Christopher Drummond and all our senior administration. I mean, we'll let them go along at their discretion. They're a pretty good judge of character. They've been doing a great job for us over the last number of years with respect to the purchasing and installation of new playground equipment. And I would like to add one of the things that we've tried to do, and I think Frank will verify this, we tried to, and we've practiced what we preach when it comes to playground equipment, new playground equipment. We've tried to distribute it equally and fairly throughout the city of Charlottetown. And the resolution that we're going to be bringing forward to council is consistent with that format.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
so I thought what we just approved was for the lowest tender or whatever to buy new equipment. The equipment's not bought yet.
No.
So do we have equipment that we're getting ready to install like tomorrow?
No. When the resolution passes, then that gives the green light to the Parks and Recreation Department to go out and purchase the equipment.
Right. So what's the concern right now about whether we can or can't put park equipment in? We don't have any in right now anyway. By the time it comes in, I'm sure that the restrictions will be lifted. You won't be in phase 1 anymore.
Well, all I'm saying is that once the equipment is purchased, then we'll leave that to the staff and their discretion to install the playground equipment. And as we move along, we won't know what phase we're in with respect to the lifting of the restrictions from the province of Prince Edward Island. You know, it could be phase 1, it could be phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, phase 5. We're not really sure where we're going to be, but we'll be assessing and evaluating that as we move along.
So just let me read you a paragraph from the province. It says, also beginning May 1, outdoor gatherings and non-contact outdoor recreation activities of no more than 5 individuals from different households will be permitted, as long as maintain physical distance. I would think that means a child could go down a slide or go on a swing.
No, it doesn't. No. Frank, can you clarify it?
So it does state that, Councillor Bernard, but it also states that there's no sharing of equipment.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest thing in phase 1 and in phase 2. It talks about no share of equipment. And for example, the playground equipment is shared among people. So that's one that we're reviewing the plan right now and see what we can safely do and put in the necessary, steps to reduce the risk. So we're in that process right now. With regards to the install of equipment, we wouldn't anticipate that taking place until probably mid-June at the earliest, because this is just given the resolution to actually order the equipment, and which we passed May 11th, hopefully at a resolution, and then we would order the equipment, and at the earliest we'd start to see some coming in mid-June.
Okay, makes sense. Okay.
Councillor Tweel, again, just to clarify, it's I know there's a timeline, but let's remain vigilant on what we're doing with this COVID-19. And as you said earlier, we are doing a good job. It's just about the presence or the image we present. Thank you.
Well, again, not to prolong the discussion, I think as far as Parks and Recreation goes, I think we've done a pretty good job. I think we've done a good job communicating with the community. Frank, I think you'll verify this. We've sent out press releases from the department on a number of issues, and we believe that there's really good cooperation from the community.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns with respect to the bringing forward the recommendation on the resolution 1, purchasing playground equipment? Do I have a mover?
I'll move it.
Thank you, Councillor Ramsey. Do I have a seconder?
I will.
Second by Councillor Bernard. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed unanimously. Thank you. The next item on 6 is verbal updates on capital projects. So once again, I'm going to request our Parks and Recreation Manager, Frank Quinn, to bring forward a synopsis of where we are with respect to the capital projects. Frank?
All right, I'm not going to provide updates on every single project, because there's quite a list, but I'm going to provide updates just on projects that are in the works right now that are coming close to, coming to the next stage. So one project that's working on is City Diamond. So there's a City Diamond, the light poles and fixture replacement. So that one is out tender right now. So we're hoping that's expected to close May 11th. So we'll see what prices come back on that, and we'll move forward from there. I hope to be able to possibly bring a resolution to council on May 11th. I know it's late, but we ended up having to retender that project. The next project that is related to City Diamond as well, and it's connected with the, since we're doing the lights and poles upgrades, we're moving them back and sort of realigning the field, is the City Diamond ball field upgrades that's going to take place. And this just closed on Tuesday, I think it was. So we're in the process right now of reviewing the submissions, the bid submissions, and we'll bring forward a recommendation, planning on bringing it forward to council as well. But once we have reviewed that, we'll send it out to the committee for their comment and feedback, so that we can move that forward to council. So that is the two projects relating to City Diamond. The other one that we're working on is the outdoor rink. We're working on doing the plans up for that. That's taking place at Hillsborough. And we've just got a preliminary plan down here right now, and preliminary specs that we hope to go out in the next week or so. So I'm going to just reviewing that right now, and Mike's been working with the engineering firm, just making a few modifications, tweaks to the actual specs.
Councillor Tweel? Frank? I'm looking at the City Diamond light poles and fixtures, 330,000, and then the City Diamond field upgrade, 65,000. So you did go to tender, right? Did you go to tender for the light poles and fixtures replacement?
We went to an initial tender, and we ended up having to go to a retender.
How many bidders did you have?
We had 4 bidders at the time, but we ended up having to go to retender again.
Wow.
And they didn't meet all the requirements of the submission. So this happened all during this whole COVID-19 when it initially just hit, and I think people were just getting used to working remotely and whatnot. But anyway, so it was unfortunate, but we made a few modifications to the tender, and we went back out, and that'll be closed on May 8th.
Okay. And what's the update on the Wrights Creek Bridge renewal, the $1.3 million project? What's the update on?
As of right now, that one is that one's at a standstill. We still have to hear back from the consult with the Aboriginal community, so that's a requirement of it. So there is also...
We have a duty to consult?
Yes, we do, yeah. So I was waiting to hear from ICIP, the funding program, on what our requirements were, because it was potentially going to be environmental requirements and the duty to consult. So we're at that step right now. Once I get through that step, we will move to the next one. There is a lot of projects, and there is, we have to sort of make sure we adhere to the steps before we move to the next one.
Okay, so the duty to consult is, do we have indigenous land around there? Is that the issue? Is that the reason?
Well, they're asking us to consult, so it's not necessarily just land. It's like if your piece of property is on land that they're unsure who owned this land beforehand. For example, the Queen Elizabeth Pathway project, we had a duty to consult there on that project as well. So that has been submitted, and we're waiting to hear back from them. The Wrights Creek Bridge project, the renewal one, is the same as well. So that's the federal government's requirement as part of the funding.
So just, Mr. Chair, just Queen Elizabeth Park Pathways, we have a duty to consult there too? Did you say, Frank?
Yes, we do, yeah. So that's already been submitted, and I'm waiting to hear back on that. But as I said, things have sort of been, with this whole COVID-19 things have been delayed, just haven't been moving along as quickly as we would like.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Is there any other questions or concerns or recommendations from the committee?
Have we had to do a duty to consult in the past?
Yes, we have. A project we've received funding before, there has been requirements for us to consult with the Aboriginal community.
So is that just standard? just with most applications?
It's not necessarily every project. Every project they'll say, okay, the federal government reviews it and say, okay, yes, this one you do have a duty to consult. For example, the City Diamond project, we did not have to consult there. It was deemed that it wasn't required because of where it was located and what the project involved. So it's the federal government reviews it, and they let us know which projects are required to consult.
Really? Okay.
Mr. Chair, just a supplementary question on that. Could I ask the department to put together a list of projects where we had to exercise a duty to consult with the Mi'kmaq Confederacy of Prince Edward Island? Could we get that? I'd like to. I didn't know that we had to do that, because Frank, this is the first time I'm hearing about this, about the Wrights Bridge. I never knew that we had to do that. That's why I'm a little surprised. So all I'm asking is if we can just get a list, not going back 20 years, just 5, 10 years.
I agree. I would think that would have been done before they even built the bridge.
Yeah.
That's why I'm kind of surprised. It's the first time I've heard of it too, and I'm a little surprised.
Yeah, Councillor Bernard, just on the bridge when it was built, I remember when it was built, because it was built from creosote by Highfield Construction, and one of the workers left the cutting torch going, and it burnt down the bridge. So that was back in the late 80s. So back then, I don't know if duty to consult was a requirement, but now that we're into a whole, the reconciliation of Indigenous people, that it's part of the process. But again, Frank, I didn't know that we had to. I know that a duty to consult is very much required, especially if there was former settlements of Indigenous people in that area.
Well, I think what we'll do, the question's been asked. Our manager is going to do up an inventory of where the prerequisite states unequivocally that the duty to consult with respect to some of these projects. So Frank will get us that information when he's able to, and then we'll further discuss it from there. Is that okay with everyone?
Just one additional comment. It is part of the federal funding, so it's related to the actual funding. The federal government is requiring that as part of this. You're getting this money. Here's what we require for you to do, and that is there is a number of criteria that's listed.
So it's part of the guidelines.
It's part of the actual funding application. We know when we make the application that this could be something we have to do, and then they let us know what we're required to do once the funding's approved.
Okay.
So that's something new to the federal government, and that's the relationship with the Indigenous people. But they're saying that all the money that goes out for construction, they have a duty to check with that first. So.
That's right.
Okay.
Any other questions on that, respect to that topic?
Just out of curiosity, does that create a holdup on our projects?
It does create not necessarily a holdup. It sets things behind until we actually hear back. So that's until we hear back, we really can't proceed. We can't proceed with doing tenders or RFPs. We potentially could start some of the actual engineering aspect of it, but we don't want to spend a whole lot on that until we know that we're good to go.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, thank you.
Good.
Okay. Okay. Next item is a request from Great Cheese Challenge event organizers to use green space in front of Founders Hall. Frank?
The Great Cheesy or Great Cheese?
Well, it says cheese. Now that's on my agenda cover. What's on yours?
Cheesy.
Thank you.
Kevin?
No, don't try Kevin.
Give him back his office, Kevin.
All right, gentlemen, I guess I'll step in here. So with regards to that, you'll see the issue summary that I provided you. It's pretty straightforward, but what they're asking for, and we don't know whether this event's even going to take place. As you know, right now, public gatherings are not permitted, and I don't know whether this is something that even will be permitted by the time this event is scheduled to take place, which is in September. So it's September 27th. But they have asked, the request is, I received an email from the organizers of the Great Cheese Challenge event, and their request is to use the green space in front of Founders Hall. The event is scheduled on September 27th. I've attached the email. They're looking at setting up a tent 80 feet by 120 in this area. They would like to have it set up from the 26th to the 3rd, and this tent would be used by their event, but also the Chef's Island event scheduled for October 2nd. They indicated that the side panels of the tent would be removed between events. The Economic Development and Tourism Event Management Committee have endorsed the event, but the decision for the actual use of the space or the location has to be made by the committee here. And Founders Hall Management has given their support for this event as well, for both the events at this location. Just to note there is another event booked at Confederation Landing on September 27th, and staff would have to consult with the organizers of the event. Now, having said that, like you said, with the current restrictions in place for public gathering, and it quite likely could be in place well into the fall, we don't even know if this event will take place. Staff supports both events, of course, taking place at either location, the green space in front of Founders Hall or Confederation Landing. The one concern we do have is that with a tent being set up at either locations for a week period, even though the side panels are removed, there's just that potential for it to be vandalized or to get high winds that time of the year.
But Frank, that would be under their responsibility, the tent, would it not?
Yes, that would be under there. Yeah, we wouldn't be responsible for it at all. Yeah, that would be their responsibility.
I mean, that's a gamble for them.
Yeah.
I mean, they leave it up there for a week, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, so that's up. I mean, we shouldn't interfere with that part of it. I don't think anyway, because we're not liable for it.
Yeah, I just wanted to make the committee aware that, that is the only concern we'd have, that it would be set up
Right.
set up for a week.
Okay.
So I guess what the question is ultimately at the end of the day, does the committee support them going to Founders Hall, the green space in front of Founders Hall, or do you prefer them going to Confederation Landing?
Well, last year, when this issue came forward, the committee said no. They had the option to go to Confederation Landing. When we purchased the property in front of Founders Hall, the aim and objective of the exercise was to purchase the property, the green space, and make it more community-oriented. Last thing I want to see is that this green space be requested by different groups, and then all of a sudden it becomes more event-oriented as opposed to community, members of the community using it from a passive perspective. So the committee said no last year. They do have the option to go to Confederation Landing, and furthermore, they do have the option to go to the event grounds. There's plenty of space there, and we as a committee and the department have yet to come up with a conceptual plan for the green space in front of Founders Hall. But the last thing I want to see as a member of this committee is this space being continuously rented out to different organizations. If we say yes to one, then we're going to say yes to them all. You can't pick and choose. You can't cherry pick. So that's what we said last year. They do have an option to go to Confederation Landing, or they do have an option to go to the event grounds. And I'd like to see that space in front of Founders Hall be for the members of the community and maintained from a passive perspective. And we made that quite clear last year.
But I think, Mitchell, my opinion of what you said, so we're saying it's all right to go to Confederation Landing, which is one of the city parks, but we're saying no to in front of Founders Hall, which is one of the city parks. So I kind of see what you're saying. Is for we don't want any of the parks being rented all the time or going commercial, but
well, that's what's going to happen with the green space in front of Founders Hall, Councillor Bernard, because it's a high profile area, and we still have the event grounds. I mean, what was it? $2.53 million spent on that facility, and no one's using it. So we should try to encourage different organizations, whether it be for non-for-profit or profit, to start utilizing this facility. I mean, we always get negative feedback whenever we use Confederation Landing for different events. We have people that live in that part of the city, Water Street, and all through that particular community. They're saying, well, why was the event grounds constructed? Why was $2.5 to $3 million paid to revitalize that particular property, and it's not being utilized? So I think we should be encouraging a lot of these different organizations to utilize that property.
Yeah, I don't entirely disagree. But the only thing I'd say is that's all true what you said. Only the event grounds is not ours, right? That's basically run by CADC. Unless now, my understanding is I would say there's probably more of a charge.
With CADC?
Yeah, I think what CADC did. My understanding is for anybody that wants to use the events ground, there's quite a bill to pay. There's quite a charge.
Well, you know what, Councillor Bernard, I think you raise a very good point.
Probably come to the city because we probably give them away fairly cheap.
Well, you know what, Councillor Bernard, I want to thank you for bringing that up. And we have our Chief Administrative Officer who's a part of this committee and as the leading man in this organization. I think we need to start collaborate with CADC and make it known to CADC that those hurdles and those obstacles from a financial perspective need to be much more conducive and much more affordable for these organizations, whether it be non-for-profit or profit. And we need to come up with a marketing plan, a strategy to welcome these organizations to utilize that property. I mean, it's just sitting there, and we get a lot of negative feedback because it's not being utilized. So here's an opportunity to reach out to CADC. If the committee agrees, we'll ask our Chief Administrative Officer, Mr. Kelly, to contact CADC immediately and to let's remove some of them hurdles, saying, as a partner of the city of Charlottetown, let's start removing those hurdles and let's start giving these organizations that opportunity to utilize that facility.
Chair?
Yes.
As you know, sitting on economic development, and the mayor does too, a lot of events that we're trying to bring to the city will not go to the events ground because of the size of the events grounds. And the infrastructure is not there and all that. And that is one of the main reasons that these other smaller groups, in my mind, is trying to go to these other spots here. And it's not like it's going to happen every week and everything like that, but it's the size and all that at the events grounds. And maybe the price has a lot to do with it too. Like that was a great question by Councillor Bernard. If they're overpricing themselves, things like that. But that is the drawback, and why they ever, I can go down the road and rant about why we ever purchased that property anyway back at the events grounds, but that's here nor there. That's 3,000 years ago. But at the same time, it's a white elephant. It's run by CADC, and talking to my managers, we always present that first to a lot of things, and they come and look at it, and they will not touch the events grounds.
Well, thank you.
That's just my opinion.
No, thank you, Councillor Ramsey. Thank you for bringing that forward. I think this is a great opportunity. I really do. For the city of Charlottetown, we are a partner of CADC. We're a 15% shareholder. We have representation on that board. But more importantly, I think the time is right for our Chief Administrative Officer to meet with CADC. And, you know, you talked about the size of the venue, Councillor Ramsey. That's a good point. That's a very good point. To see what we can do to alleviate those concerns. I mean, we just can't walk away and say that, well, the venue's too big or it costs too much and it's not user friendly. We have to make it user friendly. That's our job. We have to make it user friendly. That's our job as a partner with CADC. Again, I want to reiterate, we do have representation on that board. The CADC is a proactive organization working in collaboration and consultation with the city of Charlottetown. And I, you know, if the committee supports the idea, I would like to have Mr. Kelly meet with the leadership of CADC, whether it be Ron Wade or the president or whatever the case may be, or maybe this committee can meet with the board of directors of CADC and start those discussions. I mean, we got to start to get things in place, and we got to make that a welcoming venue as opposed to sitting there and not being utilized.
Councillor Tweel, as you know, I believe we had this same discussion last year about some of the events that took place down at the waterfront, and we were to go to CADC and talk about the events grounds. But you know, the Charlottetown events grounds, they're looking at a new model for it, and to working with Holland College. That was unfolding or evolving, and then COVID-19 hit. But you know what? The greatest challenge for downtown businesses or business in Charlottetown this year will be how to get back into business. And you know what? This Great Cheese Challenge, I'm not going to oppose it going down to the waterfront, because you know what? The downtown and business owners and operators, whether they own restaurants, bars, hotels, motels, this is going to be a hard year. And you know what? Let's just move this down the food chain so that they can start looking at planning something for the fall season, so that they can recoup losses that they're going to incur this year. I spoke to a property owner here right on Queen Street last month. One of his tenants couldn't pay their bill. That was at a loss of $37,000 in rent. And he projects that for the month of May will be another loss of $37,000. Look, there's going to be a lot of hardships out there. So they want to go with the Great Cheese Challenge on the waterfront. Let's not stop them. Let them go ahead, and we can have those parallel discussions with CADC or whatever they want to do. This is going to be a tough year. And I don't think this is not the time that we can, have these power meetings, because these power meetings may not happen because of the restrictions that we're under right now of meeting with more than 5 people in the room, or teleconferencing is an option. But let's just support our businesses, because this is going to take more than a year to recoup from, or maybe 2. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mayor Brown. So are you okay with that event going to the Confederation Landing?
Yeah.
Okay, you'll support it going to Confederation Landing?
Yes, sir. It's going to Founders Hall, right? The green space in front of Founders Hall.
Well, the question becomes, and I don't disagree with some of the things you were saying, but when we purchased that property, Mayor Brown,
what's that?
When we purchased the property, we purchased the property because we wanted to make it into a park for the community to enjoy. We did not envision, I certainly did not envision when I moved the resolution for it to become events oriented. Okay, we purchased it because we wanted to become a passive park in that part of the city. So you open the door to one organization, then you're going to be opening the door to other organizations, and then we lost the essence of it being a park. So that was the motivation for purchasing the property, and the resolution being passed was to make it a park, not a venue for events.
I understand what you're saying, Councillor Tweel.
So that's what's motivating me.
Yeah, and I understand that, but I think that where businesses want to get going and try to get customers back to establishments. Let's allow that to happen, because Councillor Tweel, you know from your business background or your family business background, this is a tough time for businesses, and they don't need roadblocks. Let business flow so that we can get going. I don't know if Frank had something to add to that or not.
Yeah, I was just going to say that the fact that normally we would just say yes to this event. We wouldn't have an issue if they're coming straight to Confederation Landing. It was just with regards to a request in the green space, either in front of Founders Hall or Confederation Landing, that we felt it needed to come to the committee, because last year, the committee had said no to the event in front of the green space. Normally this is an operational matter because it's not a large event. And part of the reason why this event wants to come to this location, the Confederation Landing or Founders Hall, the green space there, is because of the connection that it would have with the actual Founders Hall venue there, and it's more downtown. It's very walkable and whatnot. So it is normally, like, it's an event that would happen at Confederation Landing. It would not be an issue at all, and has happened. The only reason why had to come to the committee is because they wanted either the green space or Confederation Landing, and we felt that the committee needed to give their blessing if they were okay with it going to the green space, or if they preferred that it stayed at Confederation Landing. So that's either or is what we're looking for, sort of the okay from the committee.
Well, I prefer go to Confederation Landing, and I prefer the green space in front of Founders Hall to be park-oriented, a place for passive recreation, for people to enjoy it, whether they want to have a picnic or throw the frisbee or just get out and enjoy their family, take a blanket and have a picnic and those kinds of activities. I did not envision this green space becoming an event-oriented facility. So that's the question that we're faced with, because once we say yes to one organization, then how do you say no to other organizations? And then the potential is there for that facility to be an event-oriented venue, and that was not the rationale behind purchasing that property.
Oh, Frank.
Yes.
Draw me a picture of what this would look like. Like, you were talking about a tent. How big is the tent?
80 by 120.
How much?
So it's 80 by 120. 80 feet by 120. Now, it happened at Confederation Landing last year. It did. And there's sufficient space there. And the other location, there has been events that have happened in front of the green space prior to us taking complete ownership of it. There had been, events that had taken place there before with tents set up.
Well, I agree with what the mayor is saying. I think this is going to be a rough year. We have to try and help them. At the same time, geez, 120 feet by 80 in that area there, you like, I agree with what you're saying too. You still have to have room for people to want to get down and play frisbee or relax or whatever. I could see a smaller setup. I'm not sure 120 by 80. I mean, that takes up most of that lot, I would think. They're going to put that right in the middle. Is that right, Frank?
I don't have the exact plan where they would put it. It would take up probably a good part of the lot. But it last year was set up in Confederation Landing. There is another event taking place in Confederation Landing on the 27th, so we have to confirm that other event is okay with this being set up, and we should be able to work out, a plan. But like I said, we don't even know right here now if this event is even going to take place, right. And it could be changed dramatically to meet the social gathering requirements and the social distance requirements. So it could be made a lot smaller.
Did you say this was towards the end of September?
September 27th.
So why can't we revisit this in early August?
They're needing to plan. So what they need to know is, okay, to point out which location. Each location has slightly differences what they have to do for planning purposes. And if it went to Confederation Landing and they're trying to keep connected to Founders Hall in some way, they'd have to have different plans for that one. If it was more right in front in the green space, they'd have different plans relating to that site. But even though they're close to each other, each site is slightly different.
Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we request to get a conceptual design of the event. You know, I'm going to go back to what I said about asking our chief administrative officer to meet with CADC.
Yeah.
Regarding the event grounds. Mayor Brown, I know you're anxious, but I want to caution you that this particular venue, the green space in front of Founders Hall, was purchased from a parks perspective. It wasn't purchased for events. If Founders Hall thinks that it should be event oriented or driven, they should have purchased the property.
Yeah, well, but
they didn't purchase the property. The option was there. They could have purchased the property, and they didn't purchase the property. So it's great to say that they're in favor of these events taking place in front of Founders Hall. If that's the case, and they want it to be event-driven, they should have purchased the property.
So, Frank,
purchased the property.
Frank, to answer your question, the 80 by 120, that's 9,600 square feet. I believe you have over an acre and a half of green space, which is about 60,000 square feet. That gives you perspective.
It's actually under half an acre, that piece of property there.
Yeah.
That's 20,000 square feet?
It's under half an acre is what the property in front of the
It's
green.
20,000 square. It's not an acre and a half. You're saying
No, it's not. I don't have the number in front of me, but it's under half an acre.
So this tent will cover half of the property if it's under half an acre. And again, the point is,
just
Councillor,
the tent might be slightly different.
What's that?
The tent size, this is what I took, this is what they set up last year, 80 by 120.
Yeah.
So I consult with them and see, maybe the tent is going to be smaller, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's what they're wanting permission is either location. We're okay right now with either. Confederation Landing worked well, so Confederation Landing would probably be the preferred choice for staff, but we said, the other location could work as well, but because that's the one they asked for.
Okay.
Yeah, and I want to add, a guy that's why when you said 120 by 80, it seemed awful big. But I just want to go back to, I was never left with any impression when we bought the land that it was just to be used for one thing. I mean, all our parks, every once in a while, are used for something, whether somebody put on an event and it goes through council will say yes or no. Something a lot smaller. I don't know, Mitchell, if I would say nothing's ever to go there, because once we let one go, the doors are wide open. I think every single one would come to council, and council can decide. And this is a good example because although they'd like to have Founders Hall, I just think that tent's way too big for the square footage of Founders Hall. And so you can move that one to Federation Landing.
I agree, Councilor Bernard. Why don't we move a deferral till next month so we get more information?
Well, Frank has to give some indication to the promoters, correct, Frank?
Well, I mean, this is May. I mean, a month's not going to make a whole lot of difference.
But I think we agreed to go to Confederation Landing, though, Mitchell. I think it's too big for where.
Okay. Will you move it to go to Confederation Landing, Councilor Bernard?
Sure.
Okay. Seconder?
Yes.
I don't think we have.
Councilor Ramsey? All in favor?
Aye. But does it require a motion? It's an operational issue.
Motion. They're just asking where they can put it. We just tell Federation Landing.
Well, it's now a vote has been taken for the facility for the event event to be located at Confederation Landing. Thank you very much. Okay, introduction of new business. Mayor Brown?
Councillor Tweel, this is just a quick follow-up. I think Councillor Bernard mentioned earlier that the renewal plan for Prince Edward Island will allow for more than 5 members of a family to go out and experience our parks, trails, and so forth. But Frank, do we plan to continue monitoring the residents practicing physical distancing? Because again, let's not get too relaxed on these protocols. We don't want a second wave. Frank, did you hear that?
Yeah, so it broke up a little bit, but yeah, so with regards to that, our department's not going to be actually going out and actually monitoring to make sure people are maintaining social distance. We just don't have the manpower kind of thing to do that.
And we work with the police?
When issues, the police are that's part of their enforcement requirement, so they'll be looking after that. Having said that, we're going to be continuing to put in precautionary steps and measures, such as posting signage indicating social distancing, putting up notices where we deem necessary, putting restrictions on certain types of equipment if we have to. And right now, for example, like playgrounds are closed, temporarily closed. Sports courts are temporarily closed. So we are looking at that. That's one of the processes that we're looking at, reviewing options of some of the restrictions we have in place right now. And a lot of recreational, like all recreational activities are really not taking place, like sport and recreation. So how can we start to ease things, putting steps in place to ensure the safety of the users and the public? So those are things we're looking at, and we're hoping to have, relating to phase one, we're hoping to have a plan out, sort of, I guess, available first next week to see how we're going to approach that.
I have a question for you, Mayor Brown.
Yes, sir.
You sit on the EMO committee, and with respect to enforcement, whose job is it to enforce? Is it the provincial government? Is it the Charlottetown Fire Department? Is it the Charlottetown Police Department? Could you give me a synopsis? Give the committee a synopsis, and anyone that's listening to this this committee hearing, can you give me a synopsis, sir? Because you've been participating at that committee level. Who's doing the enforcement? Please give me a detailed analysis of what type of reporting and what type of enforcement's taking place over the last 4 or 5 weeks.
Good question, Councillor Tweel. And I do keep bringing it up at the memo meetings about the enforcement. And maybe Frank or Mr. Kelly can also participate by stating that the police right now are leaving that with the conservation officers with the province because the state of emergency doesn't allow us to, at this point in time, actually fine people, violators of the physical distancing protocol. And so that's where we're at. I think it's more about education instead of enforcement. And Councillor Tweel, I've been around, just like yourself, around a number of the trails, Confederation Trail, Victoria Park, some of the green spaces out in Sherwood. You can see very clearly people are respecting that protocol about physical distancing. We just have to make sure that people are reminded that it's important to maintain that 6 feet or 2 meters. So, Frank, if I'm wrong on that, or Mr. Kelly, Frank, is that what your understanding is from the memo meetings?
You're correct for the most part, I believe. The biggest
correct
thing is
where I was wrong.
Well, no. So the city police do help with enforcement with regards to our restrictions that we put in parks. So, for example, temporary closure of playgrounds, temporary closure of sports fields. And what they're doing, they're not going out to try to issue fines or anything like that. They're trying to make people aware. They go around and say, please move on. You can't have, social gatherings, kind of thing. We can beef up our signage if we needed to with regards to trespassing if we close a venue. We've done that at our clubhouses, but we're trying to, it is around public education, and it's very difficult. For example, if you put at a playground that you can be charged under the Trespassing Act, you're talking about children. So we've been working with police to sort of see what signage we need to have up, and they have been going around and checking on sites just to when issues are brought to their attention or if they see something.
Okay, so Mayor Brown, the question I have is, you seem to be a little bit evasive in terms of answering the question. The question is, and I don't mean for tickets to be issued, but who is actually out there talking with the community? Is it the city police? Is it the conservation officers? Is it the health department? Who's responsible and who has the mandate?
So the messaging, Councillor Tweel, that's going out through our communications department is frequent, and it's the same message. If you do decide to go outside of your home, stay close to home, but be smart, stay apart. So again, it's the education of it, but again, it's not to be evasive. It's what I've been told from the questions I've asked at the memo meetings. So again, it's education over enforcement. And I think it's working, but as we move to phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and so forth. We have to continue to be vigilant in practicing physical distancing. And that's quite prominent in all the news stories that come out of Canada, the US, Europe, and so forth. So it's important to keep that education component out front so that residents can practice it and probably tell others that you're not practicing, or you're not keeping that 6 feet or 2 meters from me. Please step back, and we'll get through this. But again, it's just staying focused on the protocols from the chief medical officer and her team.
Okay,
Chair
so
Trio? Chair Trio?
yeah,
Yeah, just being out and being around, walking around your neighborhood or your parks and that, and what I'm seeing is that the residents are fantastic. If I'm walking to my mailbox, for example, and someone's coming my way, either I or they automatically go across the street and things like that. And I've seen a few cases where there's people standing around and people would just say to them, I'm sorry, you have to move over, or all that. So the message is getting out there in my mind.
Yeah.
And I'd like to thank the residents of Charlottetown, for buying into this thing. Because I think our comp department is doing great with all the messages that is being sent out there. So I think it is working, but we can't take our foot off the gas.
Thank you, Councillor Ramsey. We have to keep pushing the envelope.
I have to agree with that. I think from what I've seen, I think that the message is definitely getting out there. If it's not 99 or 95% people following the health orders, it's probably 99%. I like Kevin, see the same thing. I see people keeping their distance. I see people having a chat, but they're 6 feet away. I think the message is getting out there. I think education's working. But it never hurts to have the odd drive-by from our enforcement office, because as this starts to unveil, and now you're up to 5 per family.
I know.
And, we're doing very well on the island here. We've only got, as everybody knows, there's been one more case yesterday, but for the most part, we've been doing fantastic. And this is the time I think that they're afraid people will start letting their guard down. And now that we're easing the restrictions, I think, I think, like Kevin says, I think people are doing really good, but it doesn't hurt to have the odd drive-by by our police cars just to make sure. And if anybody is too close, just listen, boys, the rules are 6 feet apart, no more than 5. Keep up the good work.
And Councillor Bernard, just a note, Prince Edward Island is tied with New Brunswick as having the lowest per capita COVID-19 cases. So that speaks loudly of what we're doing on Prince Edward Island and New Brunswick. But as we're all saying, we have to continue to practice these protocols, because there could be a second wave, and it's just, let's keep doing what we're doing. Yeah. And thanks for reminding us, Councillor Tweel, about what's going on at MEMO, the municipal EMO, because the questions are being asked, and as Frank and Mr. Kelly can attest to, that there are responses, and those responses are more about education than enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you, members of the committee. Mayor Brown, not to prolong the discussion.
No.
So, as I understand it, it's the conservation officers that are out there in our community, and if they need to communicate with the constituents of this city, it's the conservation officers and not the Charlottetown Police Department. Is that correct, sir?
That can issue the tickets. Yeah, I'm
not advocating issuing tickets. I'm talking about if there needs to be a friendly reminder, a common courtesy. So it's not the Charlottetown Police Department that has that mandate or that responsibility or assignment. It's the conservation officers from the provincial government.
Nope. Let me clarify it for you.
Okay.
Police officers are out there promoting education over enforcement. If enforcement has to be dealt with, the conservation officer can issue the ticket. Our police are not doing that.
Right. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate the discussion. Yeah. Is there any other items under new business?
Could I just ask for the next meeting, Councillor Tweel?
Yes.
Frank could give us an update on our revenue from the different sources that he's outlined in the budget, because I know it's been affected by this pandemic, And it's something that I just want to keep an eye on. I'm sure Councillor Bernard and everybody in the Finance Committee are up the same view. So
that information is going to the Finance Committee next week, Your Worship. They'll have an update, and that will come on forward to Council, but it's going to Finance next week, Your Worship.
Okay. Thank you, Peter.
Would that be the other departments also?
Yes, Your Worship, it's for all departments.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I ask one question?
I'm looking for
Councillor Twill, can I ask one question on new business?
I just want to pop back on one.
Yeah, just before we continue, if I could, Mr. Chair, there is a utility meeting at 1:30. We do have to reset the program, and so you probably have another 10 minutes at the most, if that's okay.
No, we'll wind it up now.
Yeah,
I think Terry got a question now, Mitchell.
Okay, go ahead.
So do I, Joe?
The conservation officers, there's only like 6 of them on the island, and I think this is more of an island-wide and a team approach, and I don't think there's anything wrong with our Charlottetown police officers going through patrol every once in a while to make sure that what the residents are doing are within the guidelines. It's just friendly saying you need to be, like, for a conservation officer to get down and go through Charlottetown. I mean, they basically got the island to cover.
We do have cooperation with the police and council, and so it is a concerted effort, and they are working together.
Okay, good enough. Okay.
Thank you.
One question, Mitchell?
Yes.
Yes, I was just wondering about the tenders for park things in, say, Centennial and Mulberry. Would they be going out soon? Or would they be still on schedule to be going out this summer?
Frank?
Yeah, so I can provide a comment on that. We are working right now on our tender documents, so we have some already out. There's a number of projects there. We're working on the tender documents right now with our engineer firm. So, yeah, we anticipate having those out over the next coming weeks, month, kind of thing, to get those projects underway this year. Now that some of the restrictions have been lifted so that we can do some of the work. So yeah, so we are in the works, and we're going to try to keep things on schedule the best possible, best as we can. There could be some delays, but we're doing we're still working towards our capital projects and completing as many as possible.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Twill.
You're welcome, Councillor Duran. Okay, move for adjournment.
I'll move it.
Moved by Councillor Ramsey,
Yes.
second by
I'll second it, Mitchell.
Councillor Duran. All in favor? Aye. I want to thank the committee for a very active participatory discussions that we had here. I thought it was a darn good meeting. I want to thank everyone for your insight and your comments. Every one of those comments are good comments and well thought out. And look forward to our next Parks and Recreation Committee meeting. Have a great day, and I want to thank Frank and Christopher Drummond as well, and Peter Kelly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor,
Enjoy your day.
I want to thank you for chairing a great